On 5 News tonight, doctors divided, anger on the railways, and the new Samsung smartphone catches fire. Warnings hospitals will struggle as senior medics criticise plans for a 5-day walkout by their junior colleagues. Passenger fury as the owner of one of the country's worst-performing rail services announces a near £100 million profit. And Samsung suspends sales of its new Galaxy smartphone after the batteries caught fire on some. Also tonight, we're talking ticks. A third of dogs are carrying them, and they can cause serious health problems for pets and people. Plus, it's one of the biggest decisions we can make. We look at the changing trends when it comes to naming your baby. Good evening, welcome to 5 News Tonight. I'm Matt Barbett. It is just 10 days until junior doctors across England begin one of a series of 5-day strikes, forcing tens of thousands of procedures to be cancelled. Today, they've been criticised by some of the country's leading medics. The Academy of Medical Royal Colleges has called the walkouts disproportionate, saying that short notice will cause real problems for hospitals and their patients. One junior doctor has told us they've been left with no choice, though, as our health correspondent Catherine Jones explains.
The first 5-day strike begins on September the 12th, the second after just 18 days respite. Then 2 more week-long walkouts in November and December. By any measure, a punishing schedule of strike action escalating the worst dispute in the history of the NHS.
There would usually be about 6 working at the time.
Lamise is due on shift every day of the first strike. Instead, she'll be on the picket line.
What are the consultants saying who will have to cover you?
They're actually in favour of what we're doing because we stand as one. I can understand members of the public becoming angry about this, but actually it's not small points that we're trying to argue against. We're really being pushed into a corner, which is why we are following this action. The reason we took 3 years to negotiate without any strike action is because we wanted to be understanding and we wanted to come to agreed terms. But when no one listens to you and you're backed into a corner, I mean, what else are we left with?
Now, though, the top ranks of her profession have waded in. The Academy of Medical Royal Colleges, representing more than 20 eminent health bodies, has stated it's disappointed at the prospect of strikes, describing them as not proportionate. However, since this statement's issue, 5 of these organisations have distanced themselves from the Academy's stance.
Save our NHS! Save our NHS!
If all 4 strikes go ahead, the Department of Health estimates more than 100,000 operations and 1 million hospital appointments will be postponed. Patients' representatives have appealed to the Prime Minister to intervene, to pause the whole process.
We would like her to do what she did with Hinkley Point, for example, and take time to think about it, look at it in real detail and find out from patients and perhaps other members of staff in the health service what needs to be done to have a really good look. But the immediate problem is for her to step in and stop this, pause it.
The BMA says it's fighting to save the NHS. Its opponents say the union's strikes will do too much harm to a service under extreme pressure. While the arguments continue, there are only 10 days for hospitals to plan and prepare.
Well, those arguments are going to carry on, aren't they, Cathy? Because it's clear there's quite a lot of disagreement between the senior and the junior doctors here.
Well, I think the opposition to the contract itself is as strong as ever, but obviously there are these growing voices of concern and trepidation about the method the BMA has decided to pursue to try to reach their aim, you know, these 5-day-long strikes. What is interesting, you talk about splits, the Academy of Medical Royal Colleges, the umbrella body for all those royal colleges, you know, these august bodies, they seem to present a united front today, saying they're disappointed, it's not proportionate. A couple of those individual colleges have come out this afternoon going, oh, actually, no, sorry, don't take sides. It's not fair to take sides. We just want people to talk. So there are splits even within these senior, august organisations. One thing is interesting that I do hear a lot, and that is that juniors do feel they're gaining strength from their superiors, from the consultants who are going to have to really take the burden of this. They're the ones who are going to have to work very hard for these week-long blocks. But they're the ones, apparently, in large numbers, who are saying, do this, keep going, it is our fight as well as yours. And we're behind you.
Short notice, but 10 days ago, a lot could happen in that time, of course. Kathy, many thanks. Now, for months, passengers using Southern Rail have put up with no end of disruption, and now one of the companies that operates the franchise has announced its financial results, a big rise in profits to nearly £100 million. It comes just a day after ministers promised £20 million of taxpayers' money to help improve their services. So what do the long-suffering commuters really make of that? Layla Hayes has been finding out.
Delays, cancellations and strikes. Months of travel chaos at Southern Rail have led to misery for commuters. Sean Ruddy says it's now affecting his health.
It's just a nightmare like every day. I mean, I get to work just, I'm not one like a person to be down, but I get to work actually depressed. Like yesterday I was like an hour late for work. I've just had like a baby a few months ago as well, so I'm getting home every late. I don't really get to see my child and my missus as well, so it's just like, yeah, it's just depressing really.
The chaos has been caused by a bitter dispute with unions over the role of guards and staff shortages. On Thursday, the government pledged £20 million to sort out the problems, which seem to be getting worse. In July, Southern introduced an emergency timetable, cancelling 341 trains a day. From next week, many trains will be reintroduced, but there will also be another 2 days of strikes, the fifth walkout since April. Meanwhile, profits of Southern Rail's co-owner Go Ahead have risen by more than a quarter to almost £100 million.
They're awash with money, they're hoarding it, they're giving it to their shareholders, but one thing they're not doing is looking after the passengers, and that's an absolute disgrace, and that, as far as I'm concerned, is something that the government should look at and see whether or not they should continue with the franchise.
Move down, please.
Go Ahead, who jointly run the Southern Rail franchise, say they're introducing new trains to improve services. Their chief executive, who's turned down a pay rise and bonus, said in a statement, during this period of change, Southern services have been disrupted by restricted network capacity, strike action and increased levels of absence. We apologise to the people whose lives have been affected during this time. But many commuters have had enough.
I know they're striking again next week. I'm going to have to take 2 days off work because I can't get to work.
It's affecting a lot of people's lives, and we need to get it sorted.
The company that runs Southern says they're doing their best. Passengers just want things to get better. Layla Hayes, 5 News.
A serving Royal Marine has been charged with terrorism offences related to Northern Ireland. Kieran Maxwell is accused of creating and maintaining explosive devices. He was arrested in Somerset last week after searches in Devon and Larne. A man's appeared in court charged over the deaths of 10-year-old Micaiah McDermott and his aunt Rosie Cooper. They were struck by a car that was being chased by police in southeast London on Wednesday afternoon. And a man accused of murdering banker Oliver Dearlove at the weekend has also appeared in court. 30-year-old Oliver was reportedly killed by a single punch as he waited for a taxi with friends in Blackheath. Samsung has suspended sales of its latest smartphone after reports they were catching fire.
The new Galaxy Note 7 puts a world of big ideas in your hands, because to make it big...
Well, the Galaxy Note 7 had its global launch 2 weeks ago. It was supposed to go on sale in the UK today, but some customers in America and in South Korea have reported their phone catching fire during or after charging.
It caught fire. Yep. Brand new phone, not even 2 weeks old. Be careful out there. Everyone rocking the new Note 7. It might catch fire, yo.
The company's confirmed a problem with the battery cell. Joining me now to talk about this is technology expert Kate Bevan. Good to see you, Kate. What do you think about this? Because phones catching fire, not ideal for any brand, but in the great scheme of things, it's not that many.
It's 35 units and they've shipped 2.5 million so far, so it's tiny, but I think they've actually done the right thing. Once you've had something like this happen, what really counts is how you respond to it. And Samsung has gone, right, we've got a problem, we've identified the problem, we're calling all the phones back and we're replacing them. That's a really good way to deal with it. It's a battery problem. it's a supply chain problem because they get batteries from different suppliers, so they're not working out which supplier it came from. Until then, all the phones are pulled back in. I think it's the right thing to do.
The phone's recalled. What about those people like this person who filmed this one? Well, it's not really usable now,
No.
exactly, is it? What are they going to get?
They're going to get a new phone, and I think some people are getting compensation as well. I don't know if he's one of them, but this is what I saw earlier. So I think they've done the right thing.
The competition between smartphone makers is huge, and of course there are many, many of them, but Samsung and Apple really are the big two at the moment, aren't
they are. And this is really unfortunate for Samsung. The timing is terrible because right now there's the big tech show that's on in Berlin at the moment. It's called IFA. So all eyes are on all the big technology companies anyway. Samsung had a big product launch there a couple of days ago with their new smartwatch. And they do that. The Note 7 was launched ahead of that to steal the thunder slightly of the iPhone 7, which launches next week. And of course, this is going to carry on over, and it'll probably be mentioned again next week when the iPhone 7 is launched. So it's really bad luck for Samsung.
Between the two of them, all the manufacturers actually, who is coming out on top at the moment? Is Apple following Samsung, Samsung following Apple, or is there another brand that's pushing ahead?
Well, the newer Chinese ones are coming on because I think people are starting to realise that you don't need to pay nearly £1,000 for a phone. There are lots of good Chinese makers like Huawei coming through. HTC makes good phones. Sony's making some good high-end phones as well. So there are lots to choose from at the moment, and it's really difficult actually to stand out if you're a smartphone manufacturer because they all do more or less the same thing. So you get sort of design tweaks. Samsung does those curved screens, which seem a bit like pointless.
Rumours that Apple might follow suit with that.
The same thing. Apple apparently might be losing the headphone jack. So you're trying to stand out in a commodity market. It's really tough out there for them. So this is not good news for Samsung.
I think there will be a market for whoever really moves it forward, but we had to see that. They all start to look a lot like the same to me.
They all do the same thing. They all do the same thing. Yeah.
Kate, many thanks indeed. Good to see you. Now, the SNP leader, Nicola Sturgeon, has launched what she's called a new conversation on Scottish independence. She's asking for views on Europe, Brexit and independence via surveys and town hall meetings across Scotland. She's argued that the Leave vote and the turmoil that surrounds the Labour Party at the moment have changed the political landscape. Donald Trump's wife, Melania, is suing the Daily Mail for claiming she was an escort in the 1990s. She's filed a lawsuit against the paper and a blogger, saying the statements are 100% false and they damage her personal and professional reputation. They were harrowing photos from the shores of Turkey that caused outrage around the world. A year ago today, we saw pictures of 3-year-old Alan Kurdi lying lifeless on a beach after the boat that was carrying him to Europe sank. It brought the refugee crisis into sharp focus and brought promises by governments to act. But today, campaigners and celebrities are calling on Britain to do more. A warning that Dominic Reynolds' report begins with a photo of Alan that you might find upsetting.
A limp little body lifted out of the waves. The image of 3-year-old Alan Kurdi on a Turkish beach was unforgettable. But a year after it shocked the world, Alan's aunt says our government has forgotten.
How can we close our door and heart to them?
Tima Kurdi says Alan's death looked like it would make countries like ours open up to refugees, but it hasn't happened.
Even politicians, they were moved by it. And finally, action were taken. They start to promise that they will do something to end the suffering. But for a few months, and after that, the situation is getting worse.
The boats have continued to come, and hundreds of children are now waiting on Britain's doorstep. So today, some high-profile campaigners went to the Home Office's doorstep. They want the 387 children in Calais to come to Britain now.
I try to remain calm, but I am angry. I'm as angry as any mother would be when they see children being tormented. These children have been through war.
Would you take them into your home?
I would. I don't think they'd be very happy in my home.
Why not?
Well, because my home's in an awful mess. But certainly, of course I would. I've got a spare bedroom.
Now, I want to share a story of one of
Speaker after speaker today has told human stories about children caught in this crisis. It's all in front of the building with the power to do something about it. For its part, the Home Office says they're talking to their international partners and the welfare of children is important. people here say they're not doing nearly enough.
Charities say that means our government can't continue to turn its back.
It has the luxury of indifference at the moment. You know, by an accident of geography, the UK is placed at the far end of Europe. This, at the moment, is a problem that we've found all too easy to close our eyes and ears to and hope that it will go away. Well, our numbers show it's absolutely not going away.
As the protesters sang, the Home Office said it's already doing a lot for unaccompanied migrant children. This group wants the government to change that tune and simply agree to do more. Dominic Reynolds, 5 News at the Home Office.
With me now to talk about this is campaigner and Labour peer Lord Dubs, who himself came to the UK as a child refugee fleeing the Nazis. And Alf, what do you think Britain's reputation is globally when it comes to helping people who are trying to flee danger and oppression in their home countries?
Well, I think in the 1930s, when I came, Britain was the only country that took 10,000 unaccompanied child refugees coming on the Kindertransport. And other countries said no, even the Americans said no. So we had a pretty good reputation. And then things have changed and our reputation hasn't been so good. But all I can say is this, that I've been delighted at the number of positive responses I've had to the amendment that I pushed through. Very few negative letters or emails, enormous positive comments. I think public opinion is very much on the side of our taking unaccompanied child refugees.
Is it on the side of it enough? Because, of course, during the war, public opinion would have been overwhelmingly in favour of helping people flee the Nazis and the oppression. But these days, well, public opinion is focused in all sorts of ways, Brexit and elections and the rest of it. We're not fighting a war, per se.
No, OK, but I still think that people are shocked at the scenes they see coming from the Middle East of refugees fleeing, a child dying on a beach, having drowned. People are shocked at that, and people want to do something to help.
They do. They express their shock, though, on things like social media, don't they? Usually to like-minded people, and feel they're doing something, but they're not. What can they do?
Well, people have. I've had emails. People have offered to help. They've offered to foster unaccompanied child refugees. They've said they'll raise money. They're willing to go to Calais, for example, and bring food and supplies. People want to do things. Sometimes one has to channel this particular goodwill in the right direction.
The Home Office has told us they're in active discussion with UNHCR, other partners, governments as well, to strengthen and speed up the process to bring unaccompanied children here, if it's in their best interests. I know the answer to this, but you do think more should be done, and quickly.
Well, I think it should be done quickly. I mean, that's what the Home Office was saying several weeks ago, and time goes on. I think political will could make it happen. It may be there are difficulties with the French authorities as well, but I think between them, the British and French governments could do something about it. We're not going to take everybody. We've never said that. We want to take our share of responsibility for these children who are in terrible danger. They can be sucked into criminality. They can be people trafficked. All sorts of dreadful things can happen to them, and we owe it to at least some of them to provide them with a decent life.
Alf Dubs, many thanks indeed for coming in. Still to come on 5 News Tonight. How your dog could be bringing ticks into your home. And we find out what the nation's favourite baby names really are. And discussing why people choose them. That's after the break. Welcome back, you're watching 5 News Tonight. There's a warning tonight that almost a third of dogs could be carrying ticks. Now, ticks can carry a range of diseases, including Lyme disease, which can lead to serious health problems for dogs and humans alike. They can also carry a parasite which is potentially fatal for animals. Almost 15,000 dogs were checked as part of the Big Tick project, which is carried out by Bristol University, and ticks were found on almost a third, 31% of the animals. Vet Paul Manctillo from the charity PDSA is with me now. Just tell us, Paul, what are ticks, first and foremost?
Ticks essentially are parasites, and they attach. They've got quite a few different life cycles, and they go through different larval stages. In the smaller stages, they attach to small mammals and rodents, and as they grow into adults, they then attach onto larger mammals like dogs, obviously, but also deer, sheep, hedgehogs, foxes, and people, of course, as well.
And because those other animals are in our towns and cities, the same with ticks. There's no differentiation between urban and rural.
No, absolutely. You see ticks in urban areas just as much in the country. There are hot spots in the country, I would say, where there seems to be little reservoirs of tick infections.
Whereabouts do you think?
So I was down in the New Forest county show there, and you know, nearly everybody that we spoke to there had encountered a tick or been bitten by a tick themselves, or knew somebody that had Lyme disease. So there are areas like that that are prevalent.
Yeah, Lyme disease is a really serious business, and it can affect humans, and for quite a long time as well.
Yeah, and I think it's really important when we talk about tick prevention. It's not just about you know, making sure your pets are healthy. It's about making sure the whole family is healthy. And things like Lyme disease can be severely debilitating.
So you really want to get rid of the ticks. And look, I grew up in the North Wales countryside. We had dogs. My dad used to get rid of the ticks on them that we thought came from the sheep by putting a lit cigarette to them. Is that the right thing to be doing?
No, okay, absolutely not.
So what is the best practice these days for getting rid of a tick if you find one on your dog?
So I think if there's actually a tick on your dog, there are little things called tick hooks, which are little claw hammers that you can get from your vet, and they actually twist the tick out, which is really important because what you don't want to do is pull a tick out and leave mouth parts in, which I'm sure your old wives' method of doing it would have done, because they can still cause serious reactions and infections. So that's when the tick's actually embedded in the skin. Right. But I think the most important thing is to try and prevent them even biting in the first place, or using a product from your vet that actually repels the tick and stops it from attaching to your dog.
And just briefly, in case people have never seen them, they look like a small grey sort of pinhead when they're on the animal, don't they?
They can be really small, actually, but they feed, they stick on, you know, the head parts under the skin. It's pretty gross, really, and they can feed for about 4 or 5 days before they drop off. And when they drop off, they're actually quite big. They're engorged with blood.
And don't let them crawl over your thumb like that person was doing there. Just get rid of them as soon as you can. Paul, many thanks indeed for coming in and sharing your expertise.
Yes.
Next, what do Roman, Madison, Carter and Jackson, with an X, all have in common? Answer is they are all new entries in the top 100 babies' names in England and Wales. At the top for boys is Oliver, and for girls it's Amelia. So how do mums and dads these days decide what to call their kids? Well, Ruth, number 455 on the list, has been finding out.
A baby's name says so much, not just about who we are, but about the era we're living in. So while it's unlikely that there's a Tracy or a Gavin amongst this lot, there might well be a Mia or a Charlie. This is Princess and her newborn baby daughter.
I decided to call her Aurelia. I think it's a very pretty name.
Yes.
It means golden.
Wow.
And I couldn't think of a better name to see the daughter of a princess.
But what were last year's favourite names for newborns? Well, for the 5th year running, Amelia topped the list for girls, with more than 5,000 babies given that name. And the names Isla and Ava have seen a huge jump in popularity, with both soaring into the top 10. When it comes to boys' names, nearly 7,000 babies were named Oliver, top favourite for the 3rd year running. Although in the West Midlands and London, Mohammed is now the top boy's name. And the names Noah and Oscar have jumped more than 40 places. But 1 in 5 go on to regret their choices.
We do have members sometimes telling us that they have changed their baby's names after a month, 6 months, or even further on than that. Maybe because the name is common, or because the name's unpronounceable sometimes, or in some instances, for whatever reason, the child just doesn't fit the name.
It's not a decision to take lightly.
So this little beauty hasn't even got a name yet. Maybe she could be an Eliza? No, don't like that? Or an Eleanor? A Maya? So difficult.
But what about this for a name? Arlo Michelangelo.
Italians pronounce it slightly differently, so it'd be Arlo Michelangelo Ziola. So it slightly rings slightly different in Italian, but...
That is very cool. I mean, Michelangelo, that is quite a lot to live up to, that name, isn't it?
Yeah. I've got the Star Wars theme running through the name, so they're going to kill me for saying this, but I've got a daughter named Leah. I've got a son named Jake, but his middle name's Lucas. And Isabella is the next one in line with Rey from The Force Awakens. We could have chosen worse names, I guess, like Chewbacca or Yoda.
And thank goodness you didn't. Ah, look, it's a boy. Oh, no, it isn't, it's a girl. Whatever name you choose for them, make sure it's one that they can live with too. Ruth Liptrot, 5 News.
With me now is Siobhan Freegard from Channel Mum, and we're going to talk about baby names. What are the sort of current trends then, Siobhan, in names? The same as they ever were?
Baby name day is a big day for parents across the nation. We all get the lists out and scour them to see if our children are on the list.
I've been there, it's difficult.
or if our sort of secret baby names for any future babies. I was talking to one of the ladies here and I said, oh, what you know, she doesn't have any children yet, but what will your names be? And she went, if I tell you, do you promise not to tell anyone?
Yeah, that's a good point, because people do.
Baby name stealing is a big thing. I've seen families have split apart when, you know, sister-in-law takes a name that somebody has chosen and literally they never talk again.
We nicked one of ours for our girls from a neighbour, but they're fine with it now. The girls play happily together, even got the same name. What's informing the likes of Jackson with an X getting in there for the first time?
Well, we sort of scour the lists every year and see what kind of references we can see in there and what trends. And this year we saw definite a trend away from. Over the last few years, we've seen a lot more English names, real old-fashioned sort of Poldark English names coming and royalty names. This year we're seeing a real Americanization coming back again with sort of Madison and Jackson spelt with an X in the middle, which is Justin Bieber's brother. So I guess there's sort of a media influence there, which we see every year. You know, we see the Game of Thrones influence, the Frozen influence. This year we're seeing kind of American influence.
Okay.
We're also seeing a bit of a gangster influence, but gangster in a sort of a...
Well, like Al Capone?
Well, more Ronnie and Reggie, actually. Lots more Ronnie and Reggie.
Twins.
Yes.
Okay.
Not necessarily in the same family. Nobody's actually named their twins Ronnie and Reggie yet, but lots of Ronnies and lots of Reggies.
And no Frank the Hats, I hope.
And then some quite sort of posh names coming back again.
Like what?
Sort of Penelope.
Okay.
And Arabella, and you know, this what I would call posh names.
Interesting you say Arabella, because it strikes me that in the top 10 baby names for girls, so many of them end in that sound. Amelia, Olivia, Isla, Ava, Ella, Jessica, Isabella, Mia.
Yes, and you picked this up.
You see Poppy, Millie, the sound is important to it, isn't it?
Yeah, and also we've seen, there are now actually, I think, on the last count, I didn't count these, there was 27,000 different names registered, which is double the number that we would have had maybe 5-10 years ago. So people are trying to make it their own and add little, maybe a slightly different spelling or add a hyphenated. So we've got lots and lots of something Rose, Lily Rose.
Okay.
Whatever your first name is, Rose. Maybe we're all just a bit greedy now and we want 2 names instead of 1.
Lots of different names.
And a middle name.
Final thing, I mean, maybe if you're stuck, you could just do what the Jamie Oliver family do and they add, like, River Rocket and Buddy Boo and all that kind of thing. But
it's kind of...
It's unusual, but a bit strange. Good to see you, Siobhan. Thanks very much indeed. Your name down to 2,300 in the list, I hate to say. Right, now, after all that baby talk, we've just got time to tell you about a man who could be the oldest in the world. His name is Sidomejo, and he claims to be 145. He lives in Java in Indonesia and says he has an identity card proving he was born in December 1870. Local officials say the document appears to be genuine, and the man himself says his secret to long life is to relax and take it easy. The right thing to do with the weekend upon us. Kirsty has the weather next. I'll see you again in a couple of weeks. Bye for now.